2025, I'll be competing in the British Superbike Championship for DAO Racing Honda. So for now, whilst I'm at home in Australia, I'd like to take part in the St George Summer Night Series. To do this, I need to bring in all my resources to build a bike suitable for the task.
Yeah, have a look, see what you can find.
Yeah.
Alright, bud. Cheers, mate.
See you, mate.
There is no Honda presence in racing in Australia this year, so it wasn't possible for me to just step into an existing race team like I have done in the last 2 years. So my options were to ride for another brand, to not ride at all, or to take on the task of building a bike myself.
When I was working to come here, to get here for 8:30.
Before heading home, I thought I'd stop and grab a choc top ice cream, which is a regular whippy style ice cream covered in chocolate that sets. That's a very common Aussie favourite. From Honda Australia, I have the CBR 1000RR-R. And the first job was to strip it back to a bare chassis and engine, removing all the road-going parts. So then I'm able to reassemble the bike using only the parts needed for racing. My DAO Racing Honda team in the UK have been very helpful supplying me with some of the parts for this build, and I could have possibly got all the parts needed out of the UK, but I did want to try and collaborate with some of the parts suppliers here in Australia.
You know, just underneath your hands, if your hands are on the handlebar, there's a little black panel underneath your hands, like the inner, just trying to get that off.
So I'm very grateful to VANDemon exhausts, Silcoline oils, Hell Performance brakes, and Billetta imports coming on to help me with this project so far.
Well, I understand the fairing, yeah. Yeah, heaps of spare truck. All the fairing bolts are quite, and they're small.
I was waiting on information of a few key elements before I could start this project, one of them being if I could get a CBR 1000 from Honda Australia. Once I did receive that information that I could get the bike, I was just 3 weeks out from round 1 of the St George Summer Night Series. So I've removed the electronic controlled steering lock, but like all steering locks, they got security bolts that you can't get a spanner on. So you have to bash a Torx bit into the top of the bolt, and then you can undo it. So I'll just pop the... So taking an exhaust off is normally pretty straightforward, but with this particular one, it's captivated within the oil cooler lines. So I had to separate this oil cooler line to make space to get the exhaust out. And I'm going through the mundane task of completely stripping the bike, because I'm going to be replacing the standard wiring harness with the kit more simplified wiring harness. But to do that, the bike's pretty much got to get completely stripped. One of the more time-consuming tasks is to remove the standard wiring harness and the ABS system. And in the world of maximum inconvenience, this is right up there, as if the ABS wasn't on, it would make it a lot easier to get the wiring harness off, and vice versa. If the wiring harness was off, it would make it a lot easier to get the ABS out. But you have to try and do it piece by piece, and one is in the way of the other constantly, but we did get there. Anyone that's done a wheel change on a standard bike, you'll notice that the wheel spaces always fall out. So you can get captive wheel spaces, and what that is a small lip is machined on the edge of the wheel spacer, so it'll hold on to the seal in the wheel. But if you've got access to a lathe, you can just machine a groove in your standard spacer and put a circlip on it, and then that'll do the same job, but with your standard wheel spaces. And then now that won't fall off. You can bang it around on the swing arm and it won't fall out so easy.
Yeah, they've been doing like a little YouTube.
In these events, I'll be racing in the unlimited class. So the spec of the bike is open, and I could even run my British Championship bike. But all the other riders I'll be competing against are normally racing in the Australian Championship. So for fairness and parity, I decided to build a bike equal to the Australian Superbike regulations, and that is very much in line with what the British Superstock Championship is in the UK.
For racing style, I have to suss out where to get them from.
So we're now a week in, and I feel like I've spent most of my time on the phone, but we have got the bike. A few packages are on their way from the UK, including bearings and suspension, and the local suppliers are busily getting parts ready for me.
So does this incorporate just the on-off switch as well as the...
So the on-off would be just a...
So you'll have one on each side now?
Yes.
Then? Okay. Because that's what I wasn't sure. This is... Yep.
And all of them are pretty self-explanatory.
Yep. So it wants to see clutch engage and it wants to see clutch disengage.
Disengage.
So if you just solidly click it there.
So now I've just got a block on my little...
Yep. Very nice.
And they go on really easy. Pegs if you want them.
Yeah, I think that might be better. I don't think I've had problems with it. But...
Folding.
Yeah. Sorry?
Why don't you want them folding?
Because sometimes...
First night, is it?
Well,
Or are you going to do a track day?
I would hope to do a track. Just it all depends. It's so much dependent. If I can get the bike together, really, I'd like to try and get out on the bike before the race. Yeah. And at worst case, I think the day of the race is a track day. Yeah. No worries. Thanks, guys. Good stuff.
Right,
Buzzing away in my pocket.
Pick them up.
The bike is well and truly stripped and ready to be rebuilt into a race bike.